the most dramatic example of that would be some of my work that I've done in prisons. So last year I started teaching yoga in prison. I got invited along with my wife Lauren, who's also a terrific yoga meditation teacher. We got invited to teach at a maximum security prison in the state of Maine. So we teach workshops and retreats all around the world, and we had been doing some trainings in the state of Maine, and there was an organization there called the Liberation Institute that had this yoga program going on in the state prison. So they invited us to come and teach for a couple of days these men that were doing, their yoga training. And I didn't really know the details until I showed up, but eventually I met the warden before we went in through all the security stuff. And he starts telling me how they had my yoga videos inside the prison, and they were using the yoga videos as one of the ways to rehabilitate these prisoners. And, a lot of these prisoners were ones that had committed some of the most heinous crimes, everything from murder to violent crime, armed robbery. It wasn't little crimes. This was the big leagues of crime. And eventually on that first day, we went in and we went through all these levels of security, and then we came into the room where 25 men were waiting for us to do a 2 full days of yoga. And I didn't know what to expect. So initially, it was like skydiving. It was like, being thrown into a crazy situation. And I remember being unleashed into this room and being a little surprised that there wasn't like a barricade between us and them, or that they had handcuffs on. Like, I didn't know, but they were all in the open. And as soon as we came into the room, they all like basically mobbed us. And initially I had that fight, flight, freeze response. But that quickly eroded away when I saw the smiles of gratitude on their face. Some of them had tears in their eyes because it meant so much that people from the outside world were coming in to be with them and to see them not as animals, but as humans. And one of the men that I met was this guy named Michael, who had the word war tattooed across his throat. And the A was an anarchy sign. And he had a huge, huge scar across the whole entire side of his face. And he tells me the story about how he was the most misbehaved inmate in the whole entire prison population. This particular prison had 1,000 men, so he was the worst out of them all. And because of being so bad, they threw him into solitary confinement. And when they threw him into solitary confinement, he was ready to end his life. So he tried to cut an artery on the side of his face, which is where the scar came from, by using a razor blade. And when that didn't work, he actually swallowed the razor blades.
Ugh.
And they rushed him to the hospital. And fortunately, they were able to save his life. And after they stabilized him, they put him back into solitary confinement. And this time when he came back to solitary, he realized that on the side of the cell was a computer screen behind bulletproof glass with a mouse hanging from it. And he thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me go see what's on this computer. So he goes to investigate the computer, and what he finds on the computer were these yoga videos that I had done called the Ultimate Yogi, which is a 108-day yoga program that I had produced back in like 2012. Super high quality, very high production value.
That's what you need,
so,
Dad. Yeah, well, I
yeah.
mean, he's got nothing going on. He's in solitary, 108 days. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Nothing else going on. So because of that, options are limited. He did one of the yoga practices. And he said in the middle of the yoga practice, for the first time in his life, he had heard words and language of hope and positivity, and that if you can control your mind, you can control your life. He had grown up in an environment of horrible abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. So he had become a byproduct of his environment, which led him to become a criminal, which then took him to prison. So all of a sudden, in the middle of this yoga practice, he had this new awakening. And so he decided to do the full 108-day program. He didn't have a yoga mat. So what he did was he took the razor blade that he had tried to kill himself with, and he etched into his concrete floor a 2 by 6 foot rectangular shape the size of a yoga mat. And in the videos, everybody has the words ultimate across the top of the mat. So he carved the word ultimate at the top of the rectangle. And he proceeded to move through this entire 108-day program. Now, when he got to close to day like 90, the correctional officers, who were observing this guy, they had realized that he had completely changed. And they're like, oh my God, this horrible criminal is like now this new human being. Let's take him out of solitary and put him back into general population. And when they tried to do that, for the first time ever in the history of this prison, he begged to stay in solitary so that he could finish the 108-day program, because it meant so much to him. And he didn't even want to leave solitary because he was so blissed out in his cell by doing the program. Exactly.
Yeah.
So eventually he finished 108 days. They released him back into general population. And then this organization, the Liberation Institute, they came in inspired by this guy, and they began to take them through a yoga teacher training. So now this guy, who is the worst criminal, he now teaches yoga to all the other prisoners. And now he's giving back to them. He's saving their lives. He's changing their lives. So this is an example of the power of these teachings of yoga.